Good evening, this is Atmospheric Alex here with yet another severe weather discussion here, and I just wanted to inform you all that quite a lot has changed since the last video, which is why I am doing this again. So we're going to be talking about a pretty large risk for severe weather over the next week or two, and even a risk for strong tornadoes going on into Thursday across some of these areas right within here that we're really going to be keeping our eyes on. It's also important to note that this severe weather risk probably could be extended like in these areas over here, as we could potentially see more storm energy than forecasted as our current models are rolling out, showing a very interesting scenario. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So we start today's video off with our day 1 convective outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. We're talking about a level 1 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, marginal risk, for portions of the southeast, so that's a little intriguing. We've been seeing some scattered or isolated severe thunderstorms popping up this afternoon, and areas up here in Montana and North Dakota could see a marginal risk as well. So really not expecting much today. It's going to be very hot up in these areas. It almost got up to 100 degrees yesterday, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, we're talking about that over there. Now moving on into Wednesday, we have a level 2 out of 5 slight risk on the severe weather scale for portions of South Dakota and Nebraska. Main risk being damaging winds and large hail. Can't rule out a bit of a tornado as well, but we're a little bit uncertain as that. But look at that across those areas. I know we're talking about risks pretty far north already. We're already heading into May, so that would make quite a lot of sense. And here's our first significant risk for severe weather. This is Thursday, and we were talking about a very large area here from Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, down into Kentucky, and even portions of Missouri, Tennessee, but over in those areas there. Could be talking about damaging winds, large hail, and even a couple of strong tornadoes with any supercells that are able to fire along a dry line right within here and push off to the east. We are really watching that area there. Northern to central Illinois and northern to central Indiana could be under fire for a pretty significant tornado risk on Thursday. And going into Friday, we have a much smaller, this is definitely going to be adjusted. We're talking about a 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale here for some tiny areas of Missouri, Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, and Arkansas. But yeah, this is going to get a lot bigger. We're talking about likely a pretty significant severe weather episode, I'd say, stretching throughout this entire area here. Again, models are a little bit uncertain, but they're starting to lock in on some pretty high supercell composite values. What does all this look like from the ground? Let's look at our precipitation chart here from our GFS model. As we go into Thursday, you'll begin to notice a bit of a storm system forming right within here into Minnesota and rapidly pushing on off to the north and east, possibly a very strong line of storms here, very severe line of storms pushing into those areas, possible even derecho as well. A little uncertain this far out. Going into Friday, we're talking about a lot of severe weather breaking out a little further north than most models have it, but still talking about severe weather there and pushing time even further. Going into the overnight hours, could see a more significant line pushing into middle and eastern Tennessee here in areas further off to the east. So we'll just have to wait and see. A little uncertain, kind of far out ordeal. And then what we're going to be seeing on Saturday, or could see, not going to, again, far out, talking about some supercells possibly in Texas. Wow, you all have been just seeing rounds and rounds of severe weather this spring, haven't you? Possible segments of damaging winds across some areas there and over here as well. We're going to have a large area of storm energy within here, which could allow for some significant mesoscale convective systems to develop. Going on into Sunday, look at that. We have one right in my backyard here, so that is definitely something to watch. I mean, even for middle to eastern Tennessee, this might not be here in the next small run. It could be over here, could be over here, could be all the way down here. We have no idea. So it's important to just kind of, take these days as a grain of salt, basically. And yeah, over here in the plains, we get a big system. South Carolina, it's just all over the place. It's that time of year again. So certainly going to need to keep your eyes on a swivel and see that system there dipping down south and dying. And then the plains start to wake back up a lot. Again, we'll talk about that later in the video, and especially my next few videos coming up on that topic. How about your European model? Well, we're still talking about a lot of storms, across the southeast. Definitely a flooding risk starting to unfold across these areas, and here we need to really watch that. Areas that were hit hard by Hurricane Helene could really have some issues. Going on into Wednesday, some severe weather up here across the high plains. Northern plains, actually. There's a bit of a distinction there. And going on into Thursday, we have potentially a significant line of storms, potentially even a derecho developing across Minnesota there, for the possibility of 70 to 80 mile an hour winds. And, well, a bit of a strong supercell there south of Chicago going into Gary and Chesterton, Indiana. This is not a forecast. Not a forecast, please. This is just one model here, but it does show a strong supercell forming off of that dry line that will be positioned right within here, and we'll be talking about that here shortly. Going into Friday here, Friday morning, we're seeing a lot of significant rounds of damaging winds. Look at that one there, pushing on off to the east. So just, again, activity all over the place, and that even heads to my backyard. We have more stuff forming further south. Up here in the northeast could see some severe weather. This big mess out here, wow, definitely a lot of damaging winds out of that. Potentially going into, Friday night, Saturday morning, boom, a big time round of severe weather. Not a forecast, this is all the European model. And then just more rounds of severe weather wherever they form. Some moving this way, some moving that way, or that way. We'll have to wait and see what happens. And just more of this right here. Bit of a Boeing segment here off in the plains. Continue looking on through. Look at that. Two big old MCS systems here. This is very typical for early June and late May. So definitely an active pattern coming up, and severe weather possible basically everywhere in the central and eastern U.S. Moving on into our 500 millibar winds. This is kind of our mid-level wind flow here. And you could see definitely quite a strong trough ejection moving on through onto Thursday. Very strong negative tilt to this, so definitely going to be talking about a strong tornado risk anywhere out in front of it in a favorable environment. That tracks on through. Going on into Friday, we have a bit of a subtle system here. Looks like a neutrally tilted trough right here, and that could provide some Boeing segments of damaging winds pushing across. And they could be even significant 70, 80 mile an hour winds cannot be ruled out from that. On into Saturday, we're seeing a bit of a short wave out here. Some severe weather out in front of that. We're seeing potentially more severe weather out of this neutrally tilted trough, positive or somewhere in between right within here. But a lot of uncertainties are there. And just continuing on through, and you could see the plains really wake up fast. Boom! Big trough ejection. Now, that is really far out, so take that with a grain of salt, please. But significant severe weather is possible for the plains going into next Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, you're going to have a lot of moisture coming up over the next few days, and you're not going to like it, especially if temperatures are in the 80s and 90s. We're talking about on into Wednesday, a significant surge of moisture here, and a little bit up here. That's why you have, potentially some limited severe weather risk up there. Going on into Thursday, big old pool of 70-degree dew points across a very large area. Any storms that form could immediately become strong to severe. And moving on into Friday, same song and dance. This is a very nice environment here. Can't exclude North Carolina, South Carolina as well. Dews up to 76 degrees. Goodness gracious. And then moving on into Saturday, same thing. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It goes on and on and on. Very active, widespread pattern. And it's just going to keep going here. Storm energy, how much are we talking about? We're seeing some of it possible tomorrow, but you'll have a lot of dry air aloft, so nothing is expected. Going on into Wednesday, definitely a lot of storm energy, upwards of 3,000 to 4,000 Cape. That is enough to sustain severe, possibly significant severe weather. Going on into Thursday, almost up to 5,000 storm energy here. Definitely your strong tornado risk embedded in that, and anything out in front could potentially be significant as well. If we see anything here, if we see... I can't point to everywhere in the U.S., basically, but you get the idea. And then into Friday, very nice area. We're talking about strong wind shear ripping across here as well in your flags here. That's 50 knots of flow, so definitely going to see damaging winds that day across, I'd say, a pretty big area. Saturday, same thing, and then it migrates out to the plains. And just dry line setup after dry line setup could lead to some heightened tornadic activity across the plains. What's your supercell composite going to be like? Let's head on through. Going on into Wednesday, like I said, this is pretty elevated here, so we'll just have to really, keep an eye on that. And then up here, it's kind of uncertain. Going on into Thursday, definitely talking about it here in your oranges, reds, and hot pinks there. Definitely your severe weather chances. And going on into Friday, my goodness, this is a huge area. And again, storms are going to be forming here, and they could track due eastward like this. That is definitely going to contain a damaging wind risk. Could be one of our more elevated wind risk days we've seen in a while across those areas, in fact. So definitely keeping our eyes on that. On into Saturday, you could see that over there, and I mean, you could just keep rolling this out, and the same song and dance just continues. I'm going to be here for a very long time, probably every other day at the very least, just tracking this severe weather as it moves through, and giving you updates on it as well. Your GEFS, supercell composite here. Not much of a signal up here, but boy oh boy, if anything happens down here, that would be quite significant. Going on into Thursday, look at that there. Friday, I'm telling you what, lots of red colors here. That is a solely wind-driven day. Could see some pretty insane gusts out of that. Going on into Saturday, it returns back to the plains. And I mean, like I said, it sounds like a broken record. It'll probably just continue to propagate out in these areas here. Just take a look at that. I mean, definitely some loud signals out there for the next week or even 2 weeks. That being said, thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Went a little more detailed this time, but still likely kept it shorter. If you did enjoy, please be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to my little corner of the weather community, share this video with friends and family on social media, and even leave a comment in the section below if you wish. With that said, you all have a wonderful night, everyone, and stay very weather aware, as this pattern is going to be quite relentless.